All right, good day, everyone. It's CJ with Rogue Money Radio, and I am very excited today to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Berwick Vigilante. Jeff is the editor of the Dollar Vigilante and also the host of Anarchast. So, Jeff, welcome back to Rogue Money.
Thank you. It's good to be back on.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And I listen to almost every anarchist, and you're one of the people that are out there truly making a difference for the communities that are involved with the entire movement. Very excited for the upcoming conference. Lots to discuss today. But Jeff, I have to ask you before we begin: how did you become an anarchist?
Turning the tables on me. Huh?
I am.
Yeah, I've told this story a few times, but I think I was born an anarchist, just like we all are. And when I was younger, I looked at the world and I said, "This is something weird about this place. There's like so much war and so much poverty and so much theft and violence and hate and all these sort of things." And being a naive, stupid young kid, I actually looked to politics to fix it. Originally, I was 14 years old, and I got behind the Conservative Party of Canada, which is where I was born. And within a few months, though, I was looking at it, I went, "This isn't the answer." I said, this is like, if anything, this is the problem. And I was like, "But what's the answer?" And I couldn't figure it out. So I went on to become an entrepreneur, and I started numerous companies. Some of them, one was worth $240 million at the height of the tech bubble. And it was actually, that company was called stockhouse.com. It's still the largest financial website in Canada to this day. And it was around the late 1990s that I heard about Doug Casey because he was quite involved in mining stocks in Canada. And I started reading his writing, and all of his writing, I said, "Man, this sounds exactly how I think." But I've never heard someone actually put it into words or actually say it out loud before or anything like that. And so I put him as our top content on our site, stockhouse.com, which, as I said, is the largest financial website in Canada. So around the year 2001 or 2002, Doug was passing through Vancouver, Canada, which is where I was living at the time, where Stockhouse was based out of, and we met for dinner. And he wanted to meet me because we had put his content up so high on our site, and so he was quite happy about that. And I was happy to meet him because I loved his writing. And we sat down to dinner, and after about an hour of eating and talking, he said, he asked me a number of questions, and at the end of it, he said, "You know what you are, don't you?" And I said, "No, what am I?" And he said, "You're a libertarian." And I had never heard that word. This was around 2001. That word wasn't that well known back then. I thought he meant liberal. And he explained what the word meant. And I was like, "Oh, I've never even heard of this." And he asked me a few more questions. And he said, "You know what you are, don't you?" And I said, "No, what am I?" And he said, "You're an anarchist." And I, just like many people, even to this day, thought he meant those people who were in Seattle. They break Starbucks windows and throw bombs and stuff. And he was like, no, that's not what it is. And I just started looking into it from that day forward. And within about a few weeks, I had read enough stuff that I went, "This is the answer. This is what I've been looking my whole life for. This explains why there's so much problems in the world. The problem is governments and secondly, central banks. That's what's causing all these problems. And the fact that humanity keeps going back to these things to fix these problems just shows just how brainwashed and propagandized people are. And the fact that people just don't know this is an answer or a solution to what the problem actually is." So from that day forward, pretty much, I went on to start the Dollar Vigilante, which was, I called a anarcho-capitalist financial newsletter, which has done very well. Of course, we some of the first people to get into cryptocurrencies, which is basically, as far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin's an anarcho-capitalist currency. And I started Anarchast, as you pointed out, and I just wanted to get the word out about how this is the answer. The answer is freedom. The answer is getting rid of governments, and not necessarily violently, just getting people to realize that they're the problem, not the answer. And that actually led just Anarchast. And I had no intention of this, but after a number of years of Anarchast, it grew to be the top anarcho-capitalist or anarchist podcast in the world. And I decided a few years ago, 4 years ago now, to start up the first anarchist or anarcho-capitalist or voluntarist, they're all the same word for the same thing, essentially, conference in the world called Anarchapulco. And I had no idea if it would do well. And the first year, about 150 people showed up, which I was really shocked at. I was not expecting that many people. And then the next year was 300. Last year was 600. And now this year looks like it's going to be over 1,200 people. So it's doubled every year since.
Right, exactly. And let's go ahead and start off talking about Anarchapulco 2018, because I know that you've changed things up a little bit this year. Is that correct?
Well, we're always changing and always adapting and always trying new things for sure. But it's generally, same general format. It's 4 days, just like it was last year. I think when we started, it was 3 days, but we've expanded to 4 days. I think the biggest difference this year is that we have so many things before and after the conference. We have a full health and wellness sort of retreat beforehand, which includes, or can include if you want, ayahuasca ceremony and things like that. And then afterwards, we have the Dollar Vigilante Summit. Also have Lark and Row. There's, it's literally more than a week worth of events going on.
Absolutely. And then yesterday I saw the exciting post that you landed a pretty big keynote speaker for the event.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have gotten him. I've been wanting to have him for years. He's very expensive, but we are doing so well this year. And of course, the cryptocurrencies have been doing so well up until today anyway, but that's a whole other story we could talk about if you want. But we could afford to get Ron Paul to come down. He's, of course, he's said many times in the past, he's been quoted as saying he thinks anarchy is a great idea. He's been quoted as saying that if everyone was an anarchist, that'd be wonderful. So he's very, very, very open to the idea of voluntarism and anarchy, if not completely open to it. And you could just see that the way he was his entire life. He was known as Dr. No in Congress. He would vote no on everything. He wanted nothing. Actually, there was a great quote of his that I just shared on Facebook. I'll see if I can pull it up here. That
sure.
About the Federal Reserve. So he started sort of the End the Fed movement. So he's really, a hero to freedom lovers and anarchists in particular, because he really was an anarchist working from the inside, from all of his actions. That's what he was. He would say no to everything that the government wanted to do. And the quote that I'm pulling up is great. Let me just pull it up here. It's about the Federal Reserve and the IRS. And he says, okay, this is a Ron Paul quote that I just shared today because I loved it so much. When I say cut taxes, I don't mean fiddle with the code. I mean abolish the income tax and the IRS and replace them with nothing. So another great, very voluntarist anarchist quote from Ron Paul. So super, super excited that we were able to get him down. I've had him on Anarchast earlier this year. And of course, he's very in demand as a speaker and very busy person, but we managed to get him for Anarchapulco. So we're absolutely thrilled about that.
Good. And let's go ahead and jump into the entire cryptocurrency market. It's a very exciting time. This 2017 was just almost, I know you've been talking about it for several years, but this year in part seems almost kind of like the breakout year.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been shocked at how well things have done this year. I was not expecting this to go this well, this fast. I'm just trying to pull up some charts here right now, but Bitcoin about a year ago, let me see if I can pull up the chart, was, let's see, at the start of 2017, it was $800. So 1 year ago, actually, that was actually 1 year exactly today. It was $800. It's currently about $14,000, 13 to 14,000. It's come off of its highs, which were just above 19,000, which is in my opinion, a very, very normal and needed, much needed correction because it had risen way too high, too fast, in my opinion. We blew through the entire 10,000 to 20,000 level in, let me just look it up here. Everything's happening so fast, you barely have time to even catch your breath and realize what's going on to see what's going. We passed the 10,000 level on December 2nd, so 20 days ago, less than 3 weeks ago, we passed the $10,000 level, and it almost hit $20,000 a couple days ago. It was over $19,000. So we blew through 10,000 to 20,000 in less than 3 weeks. That's a little fast, in my opinion, and it's definitely was needed to cool off a bit. I was starting to see crazy stuff on the internet. I don't mean to sound like Peter Schill here, but I was seeing so much crazy stuff, people mortgaging their houses to buy Bitcoin. People, all of a sudden, everyone in the world was a expert cryptocurrency trader all in the last few weeks, which is always what happens when you have a bull market. So those people needed to get a good smack, and I think they're getting a good smack right now, down from 19,000 to about 13,000, which actually we put out an alert yesterday or 2 days ago, 1 or 2 days ago, saying this was going to happen. And actually, Ed Bugos, who's our senior analyst, picked the bottom on Bitcoin as 12,500, which I think it touched today. So Once again, we've just nailed exactly this thing. I'm shocked that how good we're nailing it. I have no idea how we're doing so well. I think part of it is that this market isn't very manipulated, so it's actually behaving how a market should actually behave. So we're a lot more able to see these sort of things happening and be able to predict them. Because really, when you're looking at things like the stock market and the bond market and things like that, those are so manipulated that unless you really know what the elites are going to do, it's really hard to know which direction it's going to go, because they have all their plans in place. They control it so much and manipulate it so much that it's really their choice where it goes. Whereas something like Bitcoin, they definitely can't control it anywhere to the extent that they can those markets. And some people might bring up that we just had Bitcoin futures come into effect a couple of weeks ago, and that might have some effect on Bitcoin going forward. And I've seen some speculation already that some people think this boom was caused to some extent by Wall Street buying it up beforehand and then using the futures to short it afterwards. That is possible. I'll have to look more deeply into the numbers on things like that. But this is a very needed correction. We've been going nowhere but straight up now. The last time there was a correction, I'm just looking at the charts here, of any size was when it was at $7,000. It went back down to it was in the 5,000s. So that was a correction, like 30% correction. That was about a month and a half ago. So that was the last time there was a correction. It's been straight up since then. Totally, absolutely needed, and a cooling off period in the market.
Yeah, how important do you think in terms of the cryptocurrency, the blockchain technology, as we move to a completely decentralized, how important that is to the anarchy, as a transparent financial system? And again, I guess you could argue it's not a financial system, it's just a matter of to exchange a lot more, any type of Federal Reserve, any type of manipulation.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit up on me on the question, but I think if I heard you correctly, you're asking how this sort of evolution in cryptocurrencies is changing the game, if I understand your question correctly, and absolutely is changing the game dramatically. We have yet to see the repercussions of what's happened in the last year. We've seen anarcho-capitalists, anarchists, voluntarists go from basement-dwelling broke people to incredibly wealthy people in the last 2 years. Many of them are anarcho-capitalists. They're very entrepreneurial-minded, but for whatever reason, they had not created a lot of capital, because really before cryptocurrencies, it was very difficult for a freedom-minded person who wanted to stick to their principles to make a large amount of wealth. Really, the only way to become billionaires in the last 20 or 30 years was to, at least to some extent, to buy into the current system, the central banking system. People like Donald Trump have been massive beneficiaries of buying into this system and propagating this system. If you were against central banking, against fiat currencies, against taxes, just to start with, many anarchists wouldn't even want to start businesses because they wouldn't even want to get involved with the regulations and the taxes involved. But now we have the cryptocurrency space, which has spawned the decentralization of everything sort of market. So you now can create all kinds of ventures that are decentralized, that don't actually even necessarily exist anywhere. And that's through things like using things like Ethereum and decentralized applications. And now we have the ICO sort of market, the initial coin offering. So you can actually start up a company, not even a company really, I don't even know what you call it, a venture that you could finance through initial coin offering, which you wouldn't have to go through any of the regulations of Wall Street or anything like that. You get your investment in things like Ethereum and Bitcoin, which are free market money, which are not government-controlled money, which they can't inflate, and things like that. So this is an absolute game changer, what's happened in the last few years, and it's literally just beginning. We've seen, of course, a huge run-up in the price of a lot of these coins, especially Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a few others that have just run up tremendously. And we're going to see pullbacks on those, and we might have seen that just today, a fairly sizable pullback. But we have yet to see any of the major things that are going to come out of this. We now have very freedom-minded people, because really Bitcoin's been mostly, up until this year, it's been mostly owned and known about by voluntarists and freedom-minded anarchist type people, libertarians. So this entire space, as an example, I'm wondering how many private jets will be coming to Anarchapulco this year. And I remember 4 years ago when we had the first Anarchapulco, People were showing up backpacks. They were hitchhiking down. This is the change that's happened, and so many of these people understand now how important decentralization is, and many of them are entrepreneurial minded, and they're all going out right now in the last year or two, creating all these new ventures, which is going to decentralize everything, including possibly the internet itself. So this is an absolute game changer. We have yet to even see the repercussions of what's happened in the last couple of years, and it's going to be amazing. You now have literally thousands and thousands. It could be tens, could be hundreds of thousands, it could be millions. I don't know how big the movement is at this point, but it's getting quite large. And a lot of them have a lot of money now, and they're going to be creating a lot of ventures, which is going to further destabilize the traditional sort of archaic government central banking type systems and creating new decentralized free market type systems. And like I said, we have yet to even see what's going to happen. The next few years is going to probably blow everyone's minds, including mine.
Right, right. Yeah, and in terms of the fork, the Bitcoin Cash, I know you do a lot of work at the Dollar Vigilante, the TDV to, how does it work? So how does one, start to work with, your services? What all do you guys provide?
Well, the Dollar Vigilante, we put out a lot of free information, so you can subscribe to our blog for free. Just go to dollarvigilante.com. We also post all of our content for free to all of our free content to Steemit. So we posted actually there before we even posted to our website. So that's steemit.com, which is a blockchain-based decentralized social media platform, which I've been a big supporter of for almost 2 years, about a year and a half now. And we also post almost daily videos on YouTube. So that's all free. You can go to just the Dollar Vigilante channel on YouTube. And then we also offer a newsletter. So that's where we provide most of our actionable research, investment information, advice, and analysis. And we've been doing that since 2010. We've, of course, done incredibly well recommending cryptocurrencies. I started recommending Bitcoin at $3 in 2011. So we were up over 600,000% at the peak there a couple of days ago. I recommended Ethereum in January of 2016 at around $2 or $3. Now, obviously around $400 or $500, I believe. And recommended Dash around $3. It's over $1,000. That was about a year ago as well. So we've done very well. I'm actually, just for people out there who don't know, I'm going to be doing my next cryptocurrency recommendation on Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to get access to that, just go to dollarvigilante.com/upgrade and sign up for our premium newsletter, and you'll get access to that. And I expect that once I announce that cryptocurrency will probably go up quite a bit as people become more aware of it. And so, yeah, that's basically essentially what we do at the Dollar Vigilante. We just provide this sort of information. As I pointed out, we just put out an alert 1 or 2 days ago about this crash, and we said this was going to happen. Ed Bugo said that, and like I said, he said the bottom on Bitcoin he was expecting was 12,500, which I think we hit today. So we've been so ahead of the game on this. Hardly anyone even covers the cryptocurrencies. Anyone in this space, obviously, if you go to Morgan Stanley and ask your broker about cryptocurrencies, you're not going to get a lot of good information, and most other places like that. So really, and even financial newsletters, you even have people like Peter Schell, who's runs a Euro-Pacific Bank and things like that, and he's been quite good on Austrian economics and things like that. But he's been telling people not to buy Bitcoin since I think I told him about it when it was around $10, and he's been saying ever since not to buy it. So that's what most of the other people, they're still saying stuff like that. It's quite unbelievable. It's almost like they've got some mental problem or something. They can't realize what's actually going on. But that's sort of what happens a lot of times with massive paradigm shifts. Most people just can't see it for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but I know for me personally, for whatever reason, I see them before they happen. I saw the internet. I knew in the 1980s when I was on my computer, an Apple II Plus clone computer called a Unitron that I had to buy from Vietnam and build myself with a soldering iron because we were so poor in Canada, that I said, once they connect all these computers, that's going to change the world. And so I was actually working at a bank in 1993, and someone came up to me and he said, "Have you heard about the internet?" And I said, "No, what is it?" And he told me, and I quit my job that day. And I said, that this is going to change the world. And that's when I started my internet company called Stockhouse, and it went on to be worth $240 million. And the same thing with cryptocurrencies. When I heard about Bitcoin in 2011, I was actually at Doug Casey's ranch, kind of interestingly, in La Estancia de Cafayate in Argentina. And I was there with Trace Mayer and another person. It was actually another person who told me about it before Trace, and then Trace got me into it. So we're sitting around a campfire with all these anarcho-capitalists, and a guy named Jeremy said, "Heard about Bitcoin?" I said, "No, what is it?" And he told me. I said, that sounds amazing. And then the next day I met up with Tracy. He said, you know what, I'll send you some Bitcoin so you can see how it works. And so I opened a Bitcoin wallet on blockchain.info within a few seconds. And he sent me a few Bitcoins, which at the time it was $3. So he sent me about $10 worth of Bitcoins, obviously worth like tens of thousands of dollars today if I'd kept them, but I didn't keep them because the next thing I did is he said, okay, go to this bookstore. It's on the internet and you can buy a book, ebook with the Bitcoin. So I spent the equivalent of about $20,000 today to buy that ebook. And I said, wow, this changes the game. And I went right back to the Dollar Vigilante subscribers and I said, you guys got to get into this. This is the game changers. It's the biggest sort of paradigm shift since the internet, in my opinion. And again, it really hasn't even gotten started yet. I compare the technology and the usage of cryptocurrencies to the internet around 1993, 1994. Most people still have no idea how to use it. They've just started to hear about it now, which is around where the internet was around 1994, 1995. We've seen a lot of capital go into the space. So in terms of capital flows, I'd say the cryptocurrency space or blockchain space is around the 1998 level. It's not at the $2,000 level, or sorry, year 2000 level yet. We're still around where the tech stocks were in 1998, which were really, they'd gone up a lot. They had a few pullbacks along the way, but they still hadn't had their massive skyrocket that the tech stocks did in the year 1999 and 2000. So I still think that's another year or so away, or maybe sooner, because everything seems to be speeding up now. But we're still quite early in this sort of space. So it's really interesting for me personally, because I was around for the start of the internet, to be around for the start of cryptocurrencies and see how it all progresses.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time for the cryptocurrencies and to see it evolving at the pace that it is. And there are precautions. It seems like everyone is coming out of the woodwork that, hey, I'm a crypto expert now. Tell me what your wallet address is. Tell me how much Bitcoin you have, and I can help manage it for you. So it's just kind of funny. But again, just going back to perspective and the fork, and I know Roger has been very vocal about Bitcoin Cash. And I went to go do a transaction the other day with regular Bitcoin. Somebody was just getting into it, and I thought, you know what, I'll give you like $25 US, and the fee was going to be like 40%. It was going to be like $14, something crazy. I don't think that was the original on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time for Bitcoin right now. I posted an article or video just about a week ago saying that with Bitcoin breaking out to new all-time highs, its future has actually never been more uncertain. And it's been because there's been a bit of a shift in the main sort of core programmers of Bitcoin have shifted away from wanting to use it as much as a digital cash and saying, I guess their argument is that this thing is not scalable at its current sort of the way it's designed currently. And I've heard a few people talk about this. I've heard Andreas Antonopoulos talk about it and a few other sort of programmer types talk about it. And they say, listen, if we increase the block size to 8 megabit, that's not going to fix all these problems. It'll have to be increased again to probably 64. And then this is going to actually exponentially increase as more things are connected to the internet, as cryptocurrencies get used more and more. Their argument is that you'll eventually have a block size for Bitcoin, which gets sort of put out every 10 minutes in the terabit sort of a range. And their argument is if it gets to that point, then not many people will be able to actually host Bitcoin nodes because it'll be very expensive to do so, to have the kind of hardware that can do those sort of transactions at that speed and host that much information. But at the same time, they're sort of like saying, okay, well, that's down the road. This might cause a problem, but down the road, they're talking about like 5 or 10 years from now, the block size might be a terabyte, but 5 or 10 years from now, a block size might be something that like it's so small that you can't even like. That's how much all this sort of computing power and storage is increasing. Like I remember when I first got a computer in the 1980s, I heard about a 1 megabit hard drive, 1 megabit, and I was like, wow, that's really big. This is before there was even like floppy disks. And then I heard about a 5 gigabit hard drive, I think around 1988, and it blew my mind. I said, I can't imagine something that big. And now 5 gigabit, I don't even know what I have on my Samsung Galaxy S8, I think, 32 gigabit or something like that, or 64, and I could put in a little chip this big and we have another 64 gig. So they've sort of said, well, that could be a problem 10 years from now. So let's not increase the block size at all right now. And what has happened is, because of that, we have a massive slowdown in the speed of Bitcoin and a massive increase in the cost, because everyone's trying to jam into a small 1 megabit block size, which 1 megabit is what fits on those old floppy disks from the 1980s. And they're saying we can't increase that to 2 megabit. It's too risky. And it's like, it makes absolutely no sense. But then again, some of these people are techies, right? And they don't understand economics or marketing or anything but code. And I used to run an internet company in the 1990s, really. And I remember, if I would have let my coders actually decide everything, we would have never had a product ever go live, because coders, you know, you need them. I love coders, don't get me wrong, but most of them have no idea how life works, or how marketing works, or how economics works. Like, for example, when I had my stockhouse.com, we had a group of coders. There's about 20 of them. And I said, okay, guys, we need to get, you know, the site working. It's not working right now. And they came back with a 5-year plan where it would work in like about 5 years. And it would be like perfect in every single way. And I was like, no, we need it to work like now, like this hour, like tomorrow at the latest. But they don't get that, because they're like, but the code has to be perfect. I'm like, it has to work. If it doesn't work, we don't have a product. And that's sort of where Bitcoin is right now. It's a bit of a, I'm just about to write about this probably later today. It's a bit of a tragedy of the commons with Bitcoin, because no one really owns Bitcoin. There is no Bitcoin CEO. And because of that, you have some of these situations arise. And it's actually very fascinating to watch, because really this is the free market in action. And what you've pointed out is, we had the fork on August 1st, where some people said, let's just increase the block size and deal with whatever problems come down the road a little bit later. Let's just make sure the thing works right now. And that's turned into Bitcoin Cash, which was around $300 when it launched. It's now around 2,000. It hit a high around 4,000 a couple of days ago. And it works a lot faster, and it's a lot cheaper. It's about 1/100th the cost of Bitcoin. So you pointed out you spent $14 on a, whatever the size transaction was, $100 transaction. Bitcoin Cash is about 1/100th. So instead of $14, it would have been 14 cents. And that's about what I'm seeing myself personally. Now, some people might say, well, there's SegWit, and a lot of these wallets haven't really incorporated SegWit yet. And there's all these sort of problems, and these are definitely problems. There's issues in the space, and because, as I pointed out, because there is no owner of it, there's no CEO of it, it all sort of gets approved by consensus, that you can have these sort of issues. And so I've sort of recommended to people since the beginning, since Bitcoin Cash spun off, because you received 1 Bitcoin Cash when you got your, if you had Bitcoin before August 1st and you held it properly, you had your private keys, you would get 1 free Bitcoin Cash with it. And I saw a lot of people say in August, I'm going to sell my Bitcoin Cash because it's just free money and I think it's garbage. And I was like, do not sell it, because there's a lot of problems with Bitcoin. I foresaw this all coming, and I said, keep your Bitcoin Cash, because it could end up being the real Bitcoin if the people that have most of the control over Bitcoin right now, if they don't get their act together, it could seriously go to zero if they don't get it actually working. Like, we're talking about massive delays. I've seen people all week talking about how their Bitcoin's just stuck in the queue, and it's been stuck there for days or even a week, I saw someone say recently. And as you pointed out,
wow.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, I've seen transaction fees over $50, $100 recently for some transactions. So, you know, there's definite issues in the space, and this is something I've been talking about now for a few months.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and you mentioned a couple of great points in regards to the ability, whether it's the tokenization of everything, the ICOs, and for too long, Jeff, the top 1% have the winners. The cryptocurrencies, the ICOs, give back and allow people that participate in those to decide. So you don't have to, you know, traditionally you would go, you know, maybe do an IPO, go buy a stock. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to buy an entire share, and you know, a token, a particular company. And I think the diversity that we're seeing in the ICOs is very healthy for the growth and the potential for the future of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you know, starting all the way back with the Federal Reserve being founded in 1913. Not many people know this, because most people have been brainwashed in 12 years of government indoctrination camps, which they call schools, and they say they're necessary for people to learn. It's actually the exact opposite. They make sure you don't learn anything of any value or use in those camps. And they won't teach you about how the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. That's all kept quiet. They won't teach you how the money system works. It was Henry Ford who said that if people understood how the monetary system works, there'd be a revolution tomorrow, because it is seriously a scam. There's no other way to describe it except for a Ponzi scheme and a scam that essentially impoverishes it's not even 99 to 1%. It's 99.9999% of people and gives to the 0.00001% of people. That's the scam it is. That same year in 1913, they also put in for the very first time in the U.S. an income tax, and the IRS was founded. So they're actually tied together. It was all part of a scam to enslave people in the U.S., and they actually have. Americans are some of the most financially enslaved, actually the most financially enslaved people in the world today. No one even comes close to that level of enslavement. And of course, they tell them on their propaganda screens, on their television programming, and it's called programming for a reason. It's literally brainwashing people. When they watch their football sports games, the Pentagon, or the Pentagram as I call it, actually the Department of Offense actually pays for the NFL to put out those big flags and everything and salute the troops and all that, because it's all marketing. It's all a big show to get people to believe that they live in the land of the free, and some people actually believe it. It's really shocking when you walk around. I go to the U.S. every now and then. I try to avoid it because it's so dangerous and poor and third world now. But you go there, and some people actually will tell you they live in the land of the free. It's like going to North Korea. It's just like bizarre. It's like, whoa, they actually believe what they see on their television programming. But oh man, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. What was the question?
No, you're fine. It's true. It's true. We've been so conditioned, and it starts with and to accept these systems that are in place. You know, people would rather not. They would rather argue people standing, kneeling for a flag than they would be a massive tax hike. They're so compliant that, oh, I'll pay my taxes. I'll pay my higher taxes, and I'm perfectly fine with that. That's okay. I'll pay the toll tax. I'm compliant, so I'm going to do that. But don't you dare kneel or sit down for the flag, because that's just gosh awful.
Yeah, it's shocking. I get so disgusted even hearing the national sing-along before the sports games. I'm actually a hockey fan, and I have to just turn it off. I actually have to, when I go to hockey games, I try to show up late, because I will not stand for that propaganda and for that sort of a thing. And you will actually get beat up by, or they'll try to beat you up yeah, if you don't stand up for their national sing-along, and they're actually, what they're cheering for is their own enslavement. It's quite unbelievable how brainwashed most people have gotten. But I remember your question now, so I can get back to that, and that's about how things like cryptocurrencies and blockchain and things like the ICO have sort of brought a new level of freedom to the people and gotten it out of the control of, and this is where I was going, is they started the Federal Reserve in 1913, and the U.S. government has become, as I pointed out, it was one of the least free countries in the world now, because it has such a massive amount of government. And even Donald Trump points it out. He doesn't do much to change it, because he's an insider just like all the rest of them. It's all a big show. It's a puppet show. That some people still haven't figured out what's going on, but it's just to keep people sort of thinking there's hope. That's why it's hope and change with Barack Obama or Donald Trump with whatever his Make America Great Again, and nothing's changed whatsoever. The wars continue. All the things he said he was going to stop haven't stopped. It's just a big show, just to keep people going. But he's actually came out recently. He showed the size of the tax code in the U.S. and it's like pages and pages and pages. The amount of regulations that come out, and regulations are anti-freedom. They are against freedom, and they're against innovation. They're against prosperity. They stifle everything, and they just destroy everything. So people out there who want regulation, that's like, you want to just have destruction and chaos, and a lot of things that they say, that's what anarchy is, right? They tell everyone the opposite of what everything is. There's actually the CIA, who's director, who said that, I think in the 1980s, said we'll have done our job correctly when everything Americans believe is the exact opposite of the truth. And that's almost, they've pretty much got it there right now. And so, as you pointed out, or as I was pointing out, you have the central banking, which is actually a tenet of communism. So Federal Reserve is a tenet of communism, and it's actually a central planning of the entire economy and financial and monetary system. And so the U.S. is very communist in that way. Most people don't even realize it. Most people don't know. They're brainwashed. You can hold up a $1 bill in front of them, flip it over, and it's got a pyramid with an all-seeing eye, and say, You ever notice this? And no, they've never seen it. They're brainwashed. They've been like seriously mind controlled since birth, essentially. And of course, then there's things like vaccine and fluoridation, fluoride in the water, which will make it so you can't really use your third eye. You can't use your instinct. It kind of turns you into a zombie. So a lot of these zombie movies are actually kind of real. That's exactly what's going on in the US today. But my point is that they have all this regulation, and the entire financial and monetary system is based on communism and central planning with the Federal Reserve. You have literally tens and tens or hundreds of thousands of pages of regulation stifling everything. And then you have Wall Street, which essentially is sort of in bed with the government and the central banks, and they control everything. They manipulate everything and control everything. You pretty much can't win against that system, and you can't really innovate either. If you want to try to start up a really great new company, unless they want it to do well, it's never going to have an ICO on, or not an ICO, almost forgetting the term. What do they call when they do it on Wall Street? I almost forgot. IPO, right? Man, it sounds like sounds so like from like 100 years ago now. It's amazing how fast
it does. You're right, it does.
I was like, man, what do they used to call those things? Yeah, IPOs. You know, you just won't get anywhere unless you're tied into those systems. But now with cryptocurrencies, blockchain, you can actually do those things. So we're starting to see a number of companies start up, and they're getting access to capital that they would never have access to before. And they're able to do all these things. Now, of course, you're seeing governments really trying to stop them. You saw the Chinese mafia, the government in China try to stop ICOs recently. I'm sure the SEC is going to try to stop ICOs at some point here, and fairly soon, actually. But they're trying to stop it, but you can't really stop a lot of these things. A lot of these things are very decentralized. So yeah, this is an amazing time in human history. We have so much potential freedom going out right now, and we're seeing the innovation go along with it. That's the entire cryptocurrency space. It's still around $500 billion. A year ago, it was around $15 billion. So it's increased, 50-fold in the last year. That's the kind of gains you get when you have freedom. That's what happens when you get rid of the government regulation. When you get rid of, taxation isn't an issue. You're not getting robbed constantly, because if you have cryptocurrencies, you can kind of get around that for the most part, and they can't really find it. Then you can start up companies, innovate, and these things just take off. That's why places like Hong Kong or Singapore or Dubai or many other places where they really didn't have much taxes or regulation, a lot of those places, Singapore was a fishing village like 60 years ago. There was like nothing there. Hong Kong, like 150 years ago, was the same thing. It was like a fishing village. As soon as you just get rid of the government's regulations and most of the taxation, if not all of the taxation, everything just booms and everyone's prosperous, and the world is a wonderful place. And we're starting to see that thanks to blockchain technology right now.
Yeah. And finally, we're starting to see where, in terms of the blockchain, the crypto space, we're seeing now that you're going to be able to do loans, cryptos up. There's companies just really disruptive things to the central banking system, and it's kind of neat that that whenever you have your Anarchapulco that's coming up, that you of a lot of cutting edge people regarding Dana unschooling. You have so many great speakers. Can you a little bit around some of the people that will be there presenting? I think what they're doing is just truly remarkable, and really continue to help to swallow the red pill to become understand that we have been conditioned for far too long to be a compliant society.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many world-changing sort of things going on right now. You pointed out unschooling. That's Dana Martin. She'll be speaking. She'll actually be doing her unschooling and peaceful parenting family camp after Anarchapulco. So if you have kids and you're wondering what it'd be like to unschool them so that don't go to school at all, and this is an entire movement happening. And I've met some unschooling kids. They're some of the most creative and brightest kids I've ever met in my life, because they have schooling, for the most part, especially the way it is in places like the US and the public schools. It's meant to actually destroy kids. It's meant to destroy their creativity, to destroy their interest in learning. And it's essentially prison for kids. And so they're like Pavlovian dogs. So when the buzzer goes off, they know they can stand up and go to their next indoctrination class. They sit down, and if they want to go to the washroom, they put their hands up. They're being taught how to be slaves. And so when you get them away from that, it's amazing to see how they flourish. So, so many great people in Anarchapulco. We actually have, I brought up earlier about the Federal Reserve, G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island. He'll also be speaking, along with Ron Paul, of course. Larkin Rose, he's been one of the greatest sort of speakers in terms of these sort of things. Mark Passio is coming for the first time this year, and he sort of speaks about a bit of the occult and how really the people who control the governments and the central banks are really pretty much Satanists, and they're into pedophilia and all these sort of things. All this stuff is just coming out now. It's quite amazing, but we've been talking about these things for years. Of course, we have Jeffrey Tucker. He's been a great writer about just how important the markets are, free markets. We have Rick Felfang, who's the founder of the Pirate Party, which is actually in about, I think, 30 or 40 different countries now, and actually almost became the government in Iceland just recently. So it's been a massive sort of political movement, even though he's an anarchist, and everyone who basically is part of the Pirate Party is mostly all anarchists. But they're trying to sort of take over the political system from inside. So he'll be there. Then we have Adam Kokesh, who, of course, is quite well known. He wrote the book Freedom. We have a number of big.
Adam is still doing his unpresident or non-president movement, right?
Yeah, he's actually running for not president in 2020. So his goal actually, yeah, he's actually going.
I like that.
Yeah, I believe he's going to get the nomination for the Libertarian Party for 2020. He's already done the work. I've already seen what he's done. He's going to easily, unless he gets sabotaged or gets assassinated, essentially, because that's what they will do if they see someone really having a chance to wake people up. But if he does, he'll become the Libertarian candidate in the presidential election. He's running under the platform of, as soon as he's elected, if he gets elected, of shutting down the federal government immediately, like literally that day, and returning all the power back to the states. And then, of course, we'll go into the states and work on the next election to shut that down and get it back down to the city level. And then before you know, we have anarchy everywhere, and we have peace and prosperity on earth like we've never known it. We also have another.
Yeah, say that because. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to continue on. We have a number of blockchain-related people. We actually have an entire day in Anarchapulco called Cryptopulco, which is on February 18th, I believe. Of course, Roger Ver, Bitcoin.com, and he's been a big proponent of Bitcoin Cash, is going to be there. Bruce Fenton, who was the former executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation. Anthem Blanchard, CEO of Anthem Gold. Simon Dixon, the CEO and co-founder of Bank to the Future. That's sort of been raising a lot of the funds for a lot of these blockchain companies. So a lot of people like that, all cryptocurrency related. We have Brett Vienot of School Sucks podcast. So he's another one who's been sort of leading this sort of unschooling, or at the very least, a good homeschooling sort of revolution. Luke Rudowski of We Are Change. There's been so many sort of people putting out the real media out there instead of course, the fake news as we know it. So a lot of people like Luke Rudowski, Dan Dix of Press for Truth, they're all going to be there. We have Vit Jedlicka, he's the president of Liberland. So now we have a number of countries that have started up that are pretty much anarchist countries. That's essentially what Liberland is. I'm actually a diplomat for Liberland. Liberland is in between Croatia and Serbia, and it's doing incredibly well, so he'll be there. And actually, Roger Ver is just starting his own. He's just buying an island. A number of these Bitcoin people have so much money.
I saw that. That's amazing. That's exciting.
Yeah, so we're starting up numerous countries across the world that are all sort of anarchist related, and all those people will be there. And yeah, I could just go on and on about all the amazing sort of people who are all gravitating to Anarchapulco this February.
Jeff, great. And can you also do me a favor? If you could share the dates. I think logistically there's some travel things, and I believe that recently somebody opened up a direct flight from California, I believe. Share some of that information for our listeners, please.
Yeah, that's right. So Anarchapulco is February 15th to the 18th. There's events before, as I pointed out. There's going to be a health and wellness retreat for, I think, 3 days beforehand. It's going to have all kinds of things, including yoga and meditation. And as I mentioned, we'll even be an ayahuasca ceremony in there, and very popular. We've been doing that for a number of years with one of the top shamans in Mexico. There also will be Larkin Rose has his Candles in the Dark workshop that day, which is sort of educate people how to educate other people about how to change the world, and talk to them about voluntarism and convert them to understanding that. And Larkin's got a great sort of thing about the power of compounding mathematics, in that he said if there's 10,000 voluntarists in the world today, and I think it's closer to 100,000 or millions now.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
But let's just say it's 10,000. He said if each of them could convert 3 people per year, and you know, to the understanding of what voluntarism is, due to compound growth of mathematics, that within 5 or 6 or 7 years, the entire world would be anarchist. So he has his Candles in the Dark sort of workshop where he teaches people how to educate people about this, because people just, you know, what people don't understand is you can't necessarily just use logic when you're talking to a statist, and you can't say, hey, government's bad, and here's the numbers, and here's why, and here's the logic behind it. They are literally brainwashed, as I pointed out. They are brainwashed from the government indoctrination camps and the television programming and Hollywood, which we now know is almost all financed by the Pentagram, all the war movies, all to make them think that the troops are there to help them and all this sort of stuff. They're not whatsoever. So there's a certain way you have to approach them to kind of break that brainwashing. And it's sort of like breaking people out of a cult. It's sort of like if you wanted to go to Jehovah's Witnesses across the world and talk them out of being Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't really do it with like facts and numbers. You're talking to some people who have been sort of indoctrinated into certain sort of a cult. And I'm not picking on Jehovah's Witnesses. I know nothing about them, but I'm saying it's like that's you know, who you're talking to. You're talking to people who have been very indoctrinated and brainwashed. So we have that. Anarchapulco is February 15th to the 18th. The last day is called Cryptopulco. So if you're into cryptocurrencies and blockchain and things like that, it's an entire day on that sort of a thing. A lot of the top sort of blockchain people will be here. There'd be, of course, as I mentioned, Roger Ver and Trace Mayer and Dan Larimer, who started up Steam, and EOS will be here, and Bruce Fenton and all kinds of people. Then the day after that is the Dollar Vigilante Summit, which is a one-day thing where we'll continue to talk about investment opportunities in the space. There'll be Mark Passio doing his workshop, and as I pointed out, Dana Martin doing her workshop. So there's literally like more than a week of events. You can just find out about all of them at anarchapulco.com. And as far as travel, as you pointed out, there's actually, it's not that easy to get to Acapulco for most people. There's only really a couple of direct flights from outside of the country. There's a few charters that come from Toronto and Montreal. There's a direct flight from Houston to Acapulco. There's also a direct flight from Tijuana to Acapulco, but there's also a bridge from Tijuana to San Diego Airport. So that's quite easy to get to. But they actually just add another flight, a weekly flight from Los Angeles to Acapulco every Tuesday now. So nice. those are the best ways to get here. But for most people, they'll be coming through Mexico City. And then from Mexico City, it's really about a half-hour flight total from Mexico City to Acapulco. Or you can take buses, which they have direct from the airport, which VIP buses, some of the nicest buses, far, far nicer than anything you ever see in the US. Nothing like Greyhound, nothing third world like that. Like really nice with like reclining leather seats and stuff like that, and drink service and things like that. It's about $30 and about a 4 or 5 hour bus ride from Mexico City.
Cool. And who's going to be your musical guest? Have you guys lined up musical talent for this year?
Yeah, we've got so many. We've got Backwards coming back, Eric July and Backwards. They're great.
Okay, cool.
We also have Jordan Page coming for the first time.
Blessed in the rhyme, Jeff. I watched your what was it, Bitcoin or Bitcoin? What was the name of the video that you did that was pretty cool?
Yeah, I'll be performing probably. It's
awesome.
It's called Bitcoin All the Way Up. I did that with the Free Knots. The Free Knots will be here. As I mentioned, we have Jordan Page coming down for the first time. We're probably going to also have a number of others. We're still signing up people to come. So it's going to be a full sort of a evening concert. We're probably going to have that. We haven't decided yet, but probably at one of the nicer nightclubs here in Acapulco that can hold like 1,000 people. So yeah, there's all kinds of events going on. It's an entire week of events. It's really quite amazing.
Cool, very cool. Well, I'm excited, and I need to get with V and see if we can coordinate plans. A favor, Jeff, if you could, just one more time, your website, how people can follow you, Jeff Berwick and the Dollar Vigilante, please.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Just check out dollarvigilante.com, or as I mentioned, if you go to Steemit, we're one of the top posters on Steemit, or if you just go to YouTube, type in the Dollar Vigilante. Then I have my podcast, Anarchast. That's pretty much just on YouTube, and just type in Anarchast, ANARCHAST on YouTube. And then it's Anarchapulco coming up February 15th to the 18th in less than 2 months from now. It will probably sell out, and most of the events will sell out. Nothing's sold out yet. But the registrations are coming in like crazy right now. So if you do want to come, make sure you register fairly soon. And you can just do that at anarchapulco.com.
Jeff, thank you for joining Rogue Money today. Sincerely appreciate it. And for all Rogue Money fans, please make sure to check out the Dollar Vigilante. Check out Anarchapulco. Very excited. That's coming up in February. V, get healthy, and we will catch everyone on the next side. Take care, everyone. We're over and out.